How is this still going on? This verse been going for way too long. If you ain't blind, you can see that this is wrong. And I won't comply. Not me, no way. I may be wrong.
Good morning, everyone. I was wrong. I was terribly wrong. Jean Charest got 16%. Leslyn Lewis came in third with 9%, 9.6%, I think. And Pierre Poilievre took the leadership on the first round, 68%, an overwhelming victory. Congratulations to Mr. Poilievre. I think he ran a campaign that certainly deserved the win. I just didn't think they'd let him win. So, wow, I am shocked and not shocked. I'm glad that he won. I think that now the real fight starts. Now the real battle starts. The proof is in the pudding. We'll see where all of this goes. I break down his speech minute by minute, so we'll talk about that as soon as we get into the speech. We've got lots more happening in Canada, so we'll also talk about that. King Charles, the WEF King, right? King Charles III, WEF. 6 feet rule was just made up with no science backing it at all. Patrick Brown, new news, he's suspended all council meetings because he doesn't want any investigations into him at all. So municipal politics in Ontario is very concerning. Federal politics, I don't know. Was that hope I felt last night? Was that a twinge of hope? His speech was great. Great, not just good, great. I don't think I've seen a political speech that good ever in Canada. I don't think so. So it was a great speech, and we're going to look at it in just a minute. Let's get started. If you want to support the show, head over to CanadaPoly.com. You can check out the forums. They're free. You can do a one-time payment or a monthly subscription. You can check out my book if you're interested in that. You can sign up for Kitchen Table Talks, which I think will return next week. Keep our fingers crossed. I think they'll return next week. This week would have been a good week to bring it back, but I've got a meeting today at 1 o'clock. Apologies. I don't have the time. I'm doing school board stuff. I've got to get my website up. There's a lot of stuff that's happening. So apologies. It would have been great, but I'm sorry. I just can't swing it. But next week, my fingers are crossed. And so if you want to sign up for that, sign up there, and you can check out the merch, et cetera, et cetera. And if you want to support the show without actually sending me money, but you shop on Amazon, you can click there, and that supports the show that way too. You can check out locals, and I put up videos, et cetera, that I'm watching there, and you can support the show through that medium. And you can check out all the links I use on CanadaReport.co if you're thinking, and it's searchable, and there's all sorts of stuff you can use CanadaReport.co for if you're interested in Canadian politics. But it's kind of like searching my brain. So the search terms are less useful than they used to be. I used to put very descriptive search terms so I could find things again, so I could argue with people. But I'm finding that it's not really worth arguing with people on Twitter anymore. It really isn't. They'll just trot that crap out to hurt you with it later. So even if you are arguing in good faith, people will use that to harm you, and it's just incredible. So it's not worth it. It's not worth it to engage in social media these days, not in a public forum anyway. Let's get into it. Pierre Poilievre. Here's Cormac McSweeney. He says, runner Pierre Poilievre as he listens to former leader Aaron O'Toole's address to members. I didn't watch any of the preamble. I thought they're announcing at 5 o'clock, and when I found out they were not announcing at 5 o'clock, I thought, come on. And then I heard it was going to be another hour and a half of speeches, and I thought, well, they're going to go long, so I figure I'll check at 8 o'clock, and then on the first round, Mr. Poilievre won. So it was a long night, I'm sure, for everybody in the audience waiting. This is Steve Paikin. He says there are about 90 minutes of speeches before they throw the switch to count the ballots. Pierre Poilievre and wife Anna Poilievre look like most people here, like they've had enough already, or they've heard enough already. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Absolutely. People were done. Deplorable horses kisses says, first thing I did when I landed was to check the Conservative leadership results. The tide is turning. Congratulations, Pierre Poilievre. And Unacceptable says, out with Trudeau 100%, but how confident are you about this new guy? Are his strings being pulled by the same globalists? Honest question. And Deplorable says, cautiously optimistic, let's watch his actions. I think that's the only way to measure somebody. Greg was saying you can test people, you can put challenges in front of them, etc. And yeah, but the proof's in the pudding. The proof is in what they do. And nobody's perfect. Everybody is human, and everybody makes errors, and everybody thinks something for a reason, and maybe they'll act in a certain way for a reason, and maybe they get it right and maybe they get it wrong. So I'm hopeful too. That speech, I couldn't help but be hopeful. And I'll show you what I mean. We're going to look at the speech right now. And another Twitter person says, I agree. He said that he will not let anybody in his government be part of the WEF, not even attend their meetings. Here's to hoping, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. The only way we're going to know is by seeing what he does. So if he governs the way this speech came across, and if you didn't, I watched his wife introduce him. It was great. It was great. She's an asset in a way that Sophie's not. So this is some key moments in the speech. I'm just going to go through it. In the description are my notes from the speech that I watched it again this morning just to make notes, because I watched it the first time as it was live, and I just wasn't making notes. But I watched it again this morning to make notes just about what was talked about and what wasn't. One of the things that I thought was good about the speech was he humanizes himself. At the 7-minute mark, he's talking about family, and his wife is from Argentina, I think, and she moved to Canada in 1995 and has been a part of the Canadian military and worked in campaign offices, blah, 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 blah. And so he was talking about that and talking about family gatherings. He humanized himself, kind of humble, talking about his adoption, etc. That humanizes him to people. He says his parents are here, and his biological mother is here, and very interesting. And then when he talks about his parents, he's talking about the 2 teachers who raised him, which is another thing. And he says, we're a mixed up bunch. It's a great speech, really. Check it out. Link is in the description. 9 minutes, he talks about the inflation and how it impacts real people. So he humanizes himself, and then he starts connecting the problem of the bad policies that Justin Trudeau and his government have put in place at the federal level and your hardships. Printing money leads to things costing more, but not getting anything extra, right? And he uses 10 loaves of bread, $10, an analogy. And then if you have 10 loaves of bread with $20, each loaf of bread is $2 instead of $1, blah, blah, blah. But he does a good job at explaining how these problems impact you. At 11 minutes, 30 seconds roughly, he says, people don't need a government that runs their lives. They need a government that can run a passport office. I think that's going to be a tagline in the upcoming election whenever that happens. And I think that it might be triggered sooner than later if Mr. Poilievre is as cunning in the House of Commons as he's been on the campaign trail. And he said that he has plans to not hurry things up, plans to address the issues. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means he's got plans to trigger an election, or if he's got plans to use his popularity to pressure Jagmeet Singh to have a lack of confidence in the government, or who knows, right? Jagmeet Singh has said, if there's no dental by the end of the year, that's it. I'm walking away from this deal. Right? Does he encourage that wedge? I'm not sure. He talks about cutting taxes with a fictional human at 13 minutes. And 14 minutes, he says we need to produce more food and make more things that produce money and not just produce more money. 15, he talks about housing and young people again. 15 minutes, he talks about housing and young people again. And then he talks about using federal buildings to retrofit them to be homes. I don't have a problem with this plan, other than if those homes are given to people who are fast tracking a system. If they're put on the open market and sold at fair value, and that money is brought into the government to do something good, pay down the deficit, pay down the debts, et cetera, that Justin racked up over the last few years, I'd be okay with that, so long as the government buildings that we're making into houses, as long as it makes sense, I'm okay with it. But if I've seen plans in the United Kingdom to retrofit government buildings to then give them to refugees, and I don't agree with that. So that would be a big problem, right? So which one is it, right? I have big questions. 16 minutes, he talks about energy independence within 5 years, getting off dictator's oil. I think this is something that you could do kind of a space race with in Canada. You could say, how fast can we get these pipelines built? Have bonuses, let's get energy independence in Canada. Let's start production to target a specific price at the pumps, and then let's start exporting and start fixing or helping get the world off coal with our liquid natural gas. There's all sorts of things you could do and really get the public behind it, rather than spending all this money on anti-racism and garbage. So I'm appreciating the discussion here, talking about the positioning of dictator oil, the positioning of getting Canada energy independent. This kind of messaging nimbly around the climate change zealots and their messaging, right? So I think that that's good. 17 minutes, he talks about fertilizers and taxes for farmers that will be repealed, talking about carbon taxes and all of that stuff. And he says we should be feeding the world. We have massive technology and workers and capacity to do more work. If we had efficiencies like pipelines to move the oil rather than using rail, and then you could use the rail to move more farm product to help more people around the world after Canada is fed, right? But instead, right, we do stupid things and we don't build pipelines and we use the rail capacity to ship oil, and that just doesn't make sense, because oil you absolutely need, and we will for the next 50 years anyway. There's nothing that can replace it. Not wind, not solar, nothing. So, right, we might as well plan for it. Might as well behave as if it's going to be really important for the next little while, and increase capacity and make ourselves better off while making other people better off too, right? Holy cow, capitalism. 19 minutes, he talks about arrivecan and COVID restrictions. 20 minutes, he talks about foreign healthcare and skilled workers and supporting them and fast tracking them, getting them working in their field if they test at specific levels. So, and he's saying you get in, you get a test, we get to assess your skills. And if you're skilled, then within 60 days, you get a yes or no based on that assessment. So, I mean, is that a bad plan? No, so long as we're also taking care of the Canadians who were removed from the job because of bad mandates, because of illegal mandates, because of things that people should have a right to say no to, because of bodily autonomy, right? As long as we're addressing that issue, then I have no problem with most of these plans either. 21 minutes, he talks about the violence in Canada, from the soft on crime and wrong-headed gun restrictions that Justin Trudeau's rolled out, the handgun ban and all of the other gun grab stuff that they've done, to the violence in Saskatchewan, and he names Montreal, Vancouver, all of these cities that have had violent incidents, and big violent incidents, since Justin Trudeau's taken over. They've been soft on crime, and it has not helped Canada. And Pierre Poilievre is proposing to return to sanity in that area. So hey, proof's in the pudding. Let's see it. I hope so, right? Fingers crossed. 22 minutes. He goes into he was talking about Quebec, and he says a bunch of things about Quebec, and I'm just not fast enough yet in my French. And it was at 2 times the speed. I probably could have understood it if I slowed it down, but I was busy. And at 22:59, he goes into the ending of the speech, and that's this right here. So we're going to listen to the ending of the speech. I think it's a great speech. I think it's really good. And I'll tell you about the things that he missed after we listen to the end of the speech here. Here we go.
Build their dreams, raise their families, look out for their neighbors, and earn powerful paychecks and savings free from inflation and overtaxation. We will restore Canada's promise in a country where it doesn't matter who you love, or if your name is Smith or Singh, Martin or Mohammed, Chang or Charles. A country where the dreamer, the farmer, the worker, the entrepreneur, the survivor, the fighter, the ones who get knocked down but keep getting back up and keep going can achieve their purpose. A country where the son of a teenage mother adopted by 2 teachers can dare to run for Prime Minister of Canada. Absolutely. In the words of the great Canadian Prime Minister John Diefenbaker, I am a Canadian, free to speak without fear, free to worship God in my own way, free to stand for what I think right, free to oppose what I believe wrong, free to choose those who shall govern my country. This heritage of freedom I pledge to uphold for myself and all of mankind. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Right? So if he governs as good as he can do a speech like that, goodness me, is that hope? Right? And I hope so. Fingers crossed. I've said before, Greg was saying, don't you want your team in there to represent you? And I said, I want the fastest, quickest path to a sane, sensible government ASAP. That's what I want, because the longer the insanity that has been rolled out by Trudeau is normalized, the longer people just get used to it and start behaving as if it is normal. And it is not normal. So I hope so. I desperately hope so. So if he's a globalist, we'll know soon, I guess, right? There's a couple of things he didn't mention. He didn't talk about Ukraine and the money we're spending there. He didn't talk about a healthcare crisis. Not one mention of a healthcare crisis, I guess. He talked a little bit about healthcare, but not much. He did talk about the arrivecan app and COVID restrictions being lifted, which is good. He did talk about housing and selling government buildings. He did talk about loans and support for immigrants getting into their field and healthcare and beyond, and the affordability crisis. So there are things that he's talking about that other politicians are staying away from, and there are things that he's not mentioning either that maybe could be concerning, right? Here's Tony Clement. He's celebrating that Pierre Poilievre won. Here is Justin Trudeau congratulating Pierre Poilievre. Congratulations, he says, Pierre Poilievre on being elected leader of the Conservative Party tonight. As parliamentarians, we must work together to deliver results for the people across the country. Canadians expect and deserve nothing less. Right. Justin. Jagmeet Singh says, I would like to extend my congratulations to Pierre Poilievre, but he doesn't link Pierre Poilievre. There's no @ there. There's no Twitter connection to this. He's just saying to Pierre Poilievre. This is Jagmeet Singh's actual account, by the way, on becoming the leader of the Conservative Party. I know we will disagree on a lot and rarely find common ground. It's time Canadians have leaders that tell the truth and refuse the destructive politics of division. Jagmeet Singh, he's trying to reinforce this narrative that taking control of your life and freedom to be who you want to be in Canada and live how you want to live, the government doesn't get to intervene in that, is somehow right-wing or bad or Trumpian, right? Jagmeet Singh is disingenuous. I think he's afraid that if they run an election, the people who voted for him to hold Justin accountable will not vote for him anymore or Justin. I think that that's what Jagmeet Singh is afraid of, but I don't know. Who knows? Maxime Bernier weighs in. He says, congratulations, Pierre Poilievre. Looking forward to debating with you. And there was another piece as well that talked about how Maxime Bernier doesn't regret leaving the CPC after the second leadership replaced since Andrew Scheer. So, leadership person replaced since Andrew Scheer. I think that what happened in 2018 and how Mr. Bernier responded was right for the time and for him. And I think that what Mr. Poilievre is doing right now is right for the time and for him. And we'll see. There's nothing that we can do to see the future. There's nothing that we can do to predict what's going to happen accurately. But I think that Trudeau is going to try to smear Poilievre in the Conservative leadership because they've done this against O'Toole, and O'Toole was pretty well on board. And they did it against Scheer too. They tried to make them Trumpian. They tried to brand them Trumpian, and they tried to just throw whatever would stick at them and tried to set the tone of who they were to the public for a general. And they're going to do it with Poilievre. There's really no surprise in this. It is exactly what they've done. They did it to Patrick Brown. They did it to Doug Ford. They called all of them Trumpian. Males in politics who say citizens should decide and free speech is pretty well very important to our democracy, if not essential to our democracy. That's Trumpian, right? And I don't think so, right? I just don't think so. And it's interesting that used to be the position of authoritarians, right? Trying to shut down free speech wasn't the tolerant left, right? It was somebody who was trying to take over, et cetera. And now the tolerant left is saying, if you don't believe what the public health says, you're a monster. And there's also a whole lot of irony and hilarity in the whole Neil Young, keep on rocking in the free world stuff. And then him being upset at Joe Rogan for having guests on that he disagrees with, et cetera, et cetera. Like, come on. And Shopify, you can have Joe Rogan or you can have Neil Young. Okay, bye, Neil. See you later. Keep on rocking in the free world, buddy. Right? It's weird. Anyway, back to this. Aletha says, in a fundraising pitch today, Pierre Poilievre says he wants his team to start booking ads on TV, radio, and online on Monday morning. Monday morning? You get on the phone right now. Right now. Frames it as a response to an expected liberal attack. Yeah, the liberal attack's already happening. Jagmeet Singh, that's one. Here is Joe Warmington. He's responding to Charles Adler, and Charles Adler has this account blocked, which tells me he looked into who I am. And here is Charles Adler's tweet, and he says, There's no moderate conservative option in Canada. I give Poilievre credit. He's making that 100% clear. The Conservative Party of Canada is the party of the right. Had Reform won an election without the merger, speech tonight would have been exactly the same. Okay. And Joe says, unfounded assessment, Charles. Pierre Poilievre didn't address any social conservative issues in his speech tonight. It was all about affordability, jobs, housing, energy, red tape, ending arrivecan, vax mandates, and building national unity. He didn't touch SOCON stuff. And Trent says, Czech has been a Trudeau cheerleader from 2015. He's now scared and should be. Yeah, it's interesting how they're misrepresenting fundamentally, they misrepresented what Pierre Poilievre's campaign was about. And now they're misrepresenting who he is in order to define him in the press so they can say that alt-right, Trumpian, right-wing white supremacist or whatever, they're going to try and define him in all of those ways and just go with the one that sticks. And they're going to do that because that's how they set the pace in the press, right? And that's what they've done with everybody else. They're already trying. Here's Gerald Butts. He says, if such a thing as an elite Canadian establishment exists, Goldstein and Poilievre are charter members. Yes, the elite Canadian establishment adopted by teachers. Right. Yes, that's as elite as it comes, man. Not Trudeau, who owns how many Irving gas stations and is pretty international jet setter guy. Went to boarding school and, lots of very rich people know him. He's very good friends with the Aga Khan, so say, right? All of that. Where's the elitism for Mr. Poilievre exactly? See, these attacks, it's whatever sticks. Anything that they can smear him with. Oh, he's an elite. He's an elite, is he? Oh, yeah? Okay. And I mean, he's been in government a while, but does that make him an elite? I don't think so. I don't know that it's easy to do these jobs. I don't know that it's easy to be a public figure. In fact, I know that it's not easy to be a public figure. Go on Reddit r Guelph and have a big chuckle. I have two threads on there, I think, and they're just losing it, and it's very funny. And so, it's not easy to be a public figure, but that doesn't make you elite, right? So Laurie Goldstein is responding to Gerald Butts. He says, hi, Jerry. Nope, not part of the elite. For example, he never had to apologize for billing taxpayers $82,000 for moving expenses, including $47,000 for real estate commission fees and employer taxes, $14,000 for moving logistics, and $20,000 for personalized cash payouts and incidentals, like Justin Trudeau, right? Right. So who's elite again? Weird. Here's a meme that I thought was funny. It's got Justin Trudeau on Jagmeet Singh's shoulders, and Jagmeet Singh's carrying him through, somewhere, and Justin's looking at polls and covering Jagmeet's eyes with the poll paper, and he says, Jag, we need to talk. You're clearly weighing me down. Yeah. Yep. It's definitely Jagmeet Singh's fault. Okay, we're going to talk about Charles, and then we're going to get back to Canadian governance in a more pure way, I guess. But I think this informs Canadian governments. He's now our monarch, right? And I'll show you. There was a little dance and a little party in Rideau Hall, right? There was a ceremony. People walked around a table 7 times and hopped up and down and wiggled their ears, etc. And bingo, bango, bongo, Charles is king. And this matters to Canada in ways that I can't yet connect to you, but it's gonna matter. I really think it's going to matter. Here is the response in Britain about Charles in his first speech, what he said, et cetera, et cetera. And here we go. The King's Address. This is from GBN. And Calvin says, Prince Charles' connections to the WEF and his obsession with net zero was a genuine concern, saying that shouldn't we be willing to give King Charles III the benefit of the doubt? I don't know. King Chucky.
Laid it out very clearly. He said, Harry and Meghan, they're overseas, as if they're not a part of this. And he laid out who is a part of the royal household, who's a part of the firm. The speech, I enjoyed it, actually. I thought it was very stoic for him, a lot more emotive than Her Majesty the Queen would have been, but there is a difference in character traits. Famously, I'm not a fan, or I haven't been a fan of Prince Charles. I didn't like his connections to the WEF. I don't like his obsession with net zero and the green policies, but I'm willing to give King Charles III a chance, the benefit of the doubt, because he did say that he's going to be less political. He's going to step away from all that. And he will have influence, of course. He'll have his regular meetings with the Prime Minister, where he'll be able to express his concerns, but they won't be as public as they have been previously. And listening to the speech, I was trying to find the balance of maternity versus tradition as well. and he mentioned progress quite a lot, but he also mentioned the Constitution. So I do think he's keeping a foot in both camps and trying to add balance to that. And he mentioned its sense of duty and obligation, and all of these things that the Queen really cared deeply about.
Okay, so we'll leave it there. I just wanted you to hear the net zero, the commitment to the WEF, all that stuff as his concerns for the Prince of Wales when the Prince of Wales was Prince Charles. And now that he's King Charles III, well, he's going to step back from all that. Yeah, sure, right? Old dog, new tricks or something. I don't know, some saying or whatever. This I thought was an interesting video. If you're not watching, Charles is going to sign some paper. And I think this is from the other day. It looks like this is part of an official thingamajigger. And that's a term. And he's standing here and he's waving his hand kind of a lot to move something, an inkwell or something, out of the way. And he doesn't want to move it. He wants the servant to move it. And it's 7 seconds of him just kind of being a prat about the whole thing. Are the rules about royals touching things that are on the desk? He's not allowed to touch the thing on the desk. Wouldn't it have been easier to just have him move it or whatever? I feel like somebody got in trouble after this, but here we go. If you are watching, he's pointing and he's like, get this out of here. Get this out of here. And this one too. Go move this. Right? Like, I just feel like, I don't know, maybe a medium deal, but I've seen Downton Abbey, right? Like if there's all sorts of protocol and you're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to look directly in the eye and all that stuff. Does that make it like wrong or right? I don't know. It just looks kind of, that's a weird way to grow up. I hope there's humility at that point, because Elizabeth she was a mechanic in the war, right? And I mean, that teaches you some humility, but I don't know, has Charles gone through that? And what's his name? William did tour in the military. So did Harry. Again, does that teach you humility? I don't know. Were they treated the same? I don't know. Here's Seek for Truth. And he says, the WEF King of Climate takes the throne in England. Charles is both a climate catastrophist and an advocate for the depopulation agenda. And here is Charles's TV, retv.org. And it is, you see the rainbow. The video player has a rainbow in the player, and the cookie notification has a rainbow as well. And it says part of the Sustainable Markets Initiative. And here's King Charles III, formerly, when he made this recording, he was the Prince of Wales. He was Prince Charles at this point. But still, this informs who he is, right? Here we go. It says to ensure business operates in favor of people and planet.
We've forgotten sometimes, I think, that we are part of nature. So what we do to the world around us, we are doing totally to ourselves. We can't go on, I think, equivocating on this and just expect us to test the world ultimately to destruction before you can prove that you have destroyed it. It is climate change. That's pointless to me. There is life after apparent death from the current conventional approach. We've got to come together as a world on this. I feel very strongly that we have to develop an approach which, by putting nature at the center of the whole process, what profit we make, we have to also make a profit for nature by putting something back. So my and your children and grandchildren can have some kind of reasonable future. At the moment, we are literally compromising it. We can't go on, now with all the ice cap melting completely. I mean, this is terrifying to me. It always has been.
Always has been. Nope. He was alive before 1975 and aware, right? Like he was 20 years old before 1975 or 10, right? Right? Yeah. He's older than me by quite a lot. So, it hasn't always, the rhetoric for this has not always been, right? And the idea that Charles is articulating, we can't go on doing this. What specifically is he talking about? And I thought it was interesting, the positioning of we're going to destroy the world before we can even prove that it's destroyed. No, I don't think that we have the capacity to destroy the world. And things are so local in a lot of ways that, this global idea of CO2, et cetera, as the enemy is really thin, if you ask me. Regardless, the King of England is very convinced by it. So here's a Ottawa citizen reporting on that ceremony at Rideau Hall. I don't know if there was any ear wiggling. I'm sure Charles has ears that I would be shocked if he can't wiggle them. Honestly, I've got big ears, and with big ears comes big responsibility. You have to be able to wiggle those things. If people demand to see, like, wiggle your ears, you have to be able to show them. I don't know if I can do it on camera, because I mean, I can do it on camera, but I don't know if it'll come through. Of course I can wiggle my ears. King Charles III proclaimed Canadian head of state in ceremony at Rideau Hall. After a moment's pause, those gathered applauded the moment that King Charles III was proclaimed King of Canada. Pierre Poilievre started his acceptance speech last night talking about the King and the death of the Queen, and he finished with basically the Queen is dead, long live the King. And very interesting, all of this is happening. This is the newspaper article. It says King Charles III was proclaimed Canada's head of state on Saturday at a ceremony that included heraldic trumpeting, a 21-gun salute, and a moment of remembrance for his mother, Queen Elizabeth II. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau arrived at Rideau Hall at about 10 a.m. local time with his youngest son, Hadrian, and laid flowers at a makeshift memorial for the Queen, who died Thursday. He and members of the Federal Cabinet and Privy Council met prior to the ceremony as part of the protocol needed to formally proclaim the new sovereign. The Prime Minister asked Governor General Mary Simon for permission to proceed, and after she said yes, both signed the Order in Council and the proclamation for the accession. The solemn moment unfolded at the same table used by Queen Elizabeth II during her first official visit to Canada in October 1957, and was followed by a round of applause from those gathered in the Rideau Hall ballroom. So there you go. Prince Charles is King Charles III now, and he is now the head of state of Canada. And lots of changes in a short period of time. A new CPC leader, a new king, and what will that mean for Canada going forward? I think big changes. So we'll see, right? Hope on one side in Mr. Poilievre, and potential, right? He could be our guy. Fingers crossed, right? He could be. And then on the other side, it seems certainly that King Charles is not our guy with regards to climate change and leaning into what Justin Trudeau is doing that is not really helping Canada at all. It is causing chaos, and it doesn't seem to be like a period of chaos and then things normalize to everybody's happy again. It just seems the instability is further continued, and people are off balance, and it doesn't seem that stability is returning. And that means people can't buy houses. If they can't buy houses and they don't feel stable, they can't have babies, and all sorts of concerning impacts due to these financial and other factors. It's not just the financial factors, but financial factors play into it, right? Anyway, back to this. This is one of the Ottawa mayor candidates, and she says, together we'll build the healthiest, greenest, and best connected city with the cycling and transit options we need, where families can bike safely and everyone can get everywhere they need to go on time with a bike and transit. So Ottawa is desperately trying to change from a car-centric place to a transit bike-centric place. I do have friends in Ottawa, and I was talking to Lynn the other day, and I'm looking forward to getting the kitchen table talks back, honestly, just to have check-ins from around the country, etc. It'll be really nice to see everybody. But Lynn was saying that she moved to Ottawa because the bike lanes and the bike accessibility was so good that she already could get pretty much everywhere she needed to go on a bike. And she thinks it's really strange that they're spending so much money on 25 years of bike lanes in one council session, because there are other issues, which was my basic premise. But I think that it's really interesting that it doesn't matter the reality. This still plays well in Canadian politics. And because people are so uninformed, it's unbelievable. And I mean, who can blame them? It's not that they're uninformed because they're trying to be uninformed. It's that they're uninformed because the news is focusing on the wrong things and purposely uninforming them, or purposely misinforming them. And that's wild, right? I didn't think that would be something that was happening in Canada in my lifetime, but jeepers creepers, here we are. The Green Party president resigns amid internal turmoil, saying her optimism has died. I know Elizabeth May is running for the Green Party leader. My optimism died a little bit that day too. Goodness me, again, Liz. Jeepers creepers. Don't do the welcome back Cotter skit. Nobody liked it. Okay. So yeah, the Green Party president is no longer, and her optimism is dead. And the Green Party is just kind of a mess, aren't they? I think we're seeing a big shift in the federal landscape of politics. I'm hoping that PPC plays a bigger role. It would be nice to have a conservative party tangle with possibly more conservative ideas, and have those ideas counted or discussed, right? Because I don't think the policy planks for the PPC are a problem. I think that the media did a really good job at demonizing the PPC, and well, I think there's shenanigans with elections, but that's no secret either, is there? Or is it? But it's very interesting to watch little parties like the Green Party, go through this kind of turmoil. And is Elizabeth May going to fix it for the long term? I mean, will she even put it back to what it was when she left? How long ago did she leave? 2 years? Coming back now? It seems crazy. It doesn't seem like a good idea. Moving on. Colin Wright says the Connecticut Department of Public Health has removed the words mother and father from all medical paperwork surrounding childbirth. Mothers are now the birth parent and fathers are the non-birth parent. So there you go. This is already happening in Canada. This is another example of bad policies here being exported to other states, et cetera. Now, I don't know that they're following Canada's policy exactly, but it's something that has happened here already. And it's very interesting watching these rewriting and changing of language. Doing that is culty. Changing language is culty, right? Because those who use the old language stick out like a sore thumb. Those who use the old definitions stick out like a sore thumb. People who are the anti-racism stuff too. If you are using equity and all of these hijacked words, it's the gender ideology, right? The cis women and all that stuff. Again, it's very culty. And how do you fight against that when the whole world is starting to just go along with this culty language and the language change without even really questioning it, right? And how does a society question a language change like that? Especially when anybody who brings up any concerns gets shouted down or silenced, right? Very, very difficult. I saw this floating around in the States. Justin Trudeau's brought in some erroneous and bad gun policies and gun laws in Canada. And now they're trying to use monetary flags and pressure to put pressure on gun purchasers in the United States through other means. Going around the Second Amendment, I guess. And Ian thinks it's a prelude to central bank digital currency. And Unusual Whales says, just in, the International Organization for Standardization, an organization that sets standards for business transactions, has voted to create a special code for gun stores to use when processing credit and debit card transactions via Visa and MasterCard. You think that they're not going to get rid of cash, or that they're not trying to get rid of cash? I agree with Ian. It seems like a precursor to a central bank digital currency. And that's not good news. That's not a good thing. I don't like that. Here's Rex Glacier, and he says, every time you read something about Patrick Brown, you need to have a shower afterwards. It's so true. Mayor Brown axes Brampton council meetings, blocking inquiry into canceled investigations in Brampton. Nobody is surprised by this action. He's probably going to play hockey, right? Jeepers creepers. Oh, this should have been up by the conservative leadership. I meant to move it and then I forgot. It's Roman Babber. He says, win or lose the conservative leadership race tomorrow, we already won. Our efforts helped shape the race and therefore the Conservative Party and therefore our country. Now we have the Conservative Party fighting with us for democracy, speech, and choice. Thank you so much. And as well, yesterday during Pierre's speech, he talked about all of the candidates who were still, he didn't talk about Patrick Brown, but he talked about everybody else who was still in the room. And he even went back, he reached way back to 1995 to say something nice about Jean Charest. I thought that was pretty classy, right? So good job, Mr. Poilievre, for doing that. I thought it was funny. And so it's very interesting to watch all this play out. Seems like a lot's happening very quickly in Canadian politics, but in politics around the world. So very interesting. Danielle Smith says, the Charter's last living signatory, Brian Peckford, says the Alberta Sovereignty Act will strengthen our negotiation position with Ottawa. The days of angry and ineffective letters are over. The days of decisive action are here. And so Brian Peckford says Alberta must put on its bargaining shoes and with the other provinces and the federal government come up with a new, more flexible agreement for sharing that reflects ever-changing economic and fiscal realities across the country. I hope the Sovereignty Act action is that first bargaining chip. So he's endorsing the idea of the Sovereignty Act. And Danielle Smith says, question for Toes Alberta and Brian Jean, is Mr. Peckford out to lunch as well? I'd ask you to reconsider your positions and join me in standing up to Ottawa. And this is who she's talking about. Travis Toes, Brian Jean, sorry, I forgot that wrong. Rajan Swahani, I think I got that accidentally right. And Leela Ann here, nope, there's no N, Ahir, hosted a press conference on Thursday. Sorry, everyone, if I got your name wrong, to show their unity and opposition to the proposal, the pinnacle of Smith's campaign, which would bar the federal legislation deemed harmful to Alberta's interest. So it's very interesting, these people who are tipping their hand, showing what side they're on, and it doesn't seem like they're on the side of Alberta here. Daniel Bulford says they're taking a gamble and staking their position. I think it's a mistake. I think Smith and Lowen have the support of most engaged Albertans. We'll find out. I wish I was there. So yeah, it's a very interesting race. I think Smith's going to take it. I don't think I couldn't, if all of these people stood on a stage and Daniel Smith, if all of these people stood on a stage and somebody asked me who they were, I would say they appear to be probably unelected bureaucrats. They look self-important enough, right? But I would not guess that they are competitors or people who are important to the Alberta UCP. But if I saw Danielle Smith on a stage, I would recognize her and I would probably be able to suss out the context just by her presence on the stage, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying that these people aren't important. I'm sure they're important, but I don't recognize them. And I'm watching politics. So they're not as important as they think they are, right? Maybe in Alberta, but they're not influencing that campaign. I think the Sovereignty Act is one of the main reasons Danielle Smith is as popular as she is. So good luck. We'll see how that all plays out. If Danielle Smith wins, that's going to be an interesting transition. We'll see how that all works. Dr. Leslie Lewis, this is before the CPC race, but she was writing to Declue, who's the federal health minister, and she's responding to when the WHO was having the meeting to amend the agreements between all of the countries where the WHO could unilaterally declare a pandemic, and it got rejected. And what Dr. Lewis is asking for is a copy of the risk assessment and whether or not Canada was planning on going along with the WHO's amendments or if it was going to vote against it, and why. What's your reasoning? And just for transparency, I don't think she's even going to get a response. I really don't. Here's Dr. Paul Alexander. He says, I asked the CDC director, Dr. Redfield, about the science the CDC used to make 6 feet social distancing rules. He said there's no science. We made it up. Here's him talking about that.
So I asked him, I said, so Dr. Redfield, can you tell me, can I get an example of the science and the studies that the CDC used to make that social distancing 6 feet, etc.? And he had come to our office to have a discussion with a couple of my bosses, and I was there in part of the meetings. So I was walking with him after the meeting, and he looked at me and we got along well, and he chuckled and he said, Paul, science, this is para. What he said, science. There was no science. We made it up. And I was stunned. I stood there and I looked and said, Dr. Redford, what do you mean made it up? And I was laughing. And he said, well, some people talk 12 feet, some said 9, some said 1, some countries talked about 3 feet. It looked like 6 feet would have worked, and so we went with 6 feet. And when I started to share this information, that I was so stunned and I couldn't understand how the United States, we made a 6 feet policy that businesses closed forever because of the 6 feet policy. People couldn't hold on in their businesses to have 6 feet between the 12 chairs that they had in their restaurant. They had to close. And some of those business owners self-harmed. We knew because the data was coming from the States up to our office at the HHS first before we wound it up to the White House. And I can tell you, They have business owners that committed suicide because of that 6 feet rule. It eventually destroyed their lives and their livelihood. And the reality about it, even Scott Gottlieb, I believe, not I believe, I heard him say that once in a press release more recently, that the 6 feet rule was arbitrary and just made up.
And I believe that was reported. It was one of those things that CDC admits, oh, whoops, the science backing all this was a little less sure than we said that it was, right? So what kind of impact has the 6 feet rule had in Canada? What kind of impact is having 200-horsed police officers come and shut down Skelly's while Costco was operating with impunity down the road selling their hot dogs, right? And we all just sat around and said, oh man, I'm sure that everything's going to be fine. Yowza, right? Yowza. On March 24th, 2020, Justin Trudeau stated the federal government had no immediate plans to use cell phone data to track citizens' movements during the pandemic. 2 days later, a contract previously withheld from public disclosure to do just that was awarded to Blue Dot. And it says, here's Blue Dot Inc. Total value of the contract was just under $500,000. Just shy. I wonder what the trigger point is for reporting this kind of sole source contract. I wonder if there's a trigger point that requires you to open it up to tender. Right? Tender means people can bid on the contract, right? If it's like 499,000, 498,000, 497,500, right? Because the price here is 497,200. So there's all sorts of tricks. You know who used to do that a bunch? Michelle Rempel. Michelle Rempel had a bunch of contracts or things that she was having paid for. I think it was Michelle Rempel anyway. I believe. This is going back a while because she blocked me. She was one of the first people who blocked me because I had questions about this, I think. But I had questions about a lot of the things that Michelle Rempel was doing. But regardless, you have expenditures as a member, I guess, of the House, like an MP, and if you have a contract or something, or within your ministry, contract at a certain level, you don't have to get approval or whatever under a certain level. Or above a certain level, you have to go to tender and approvals, et cetera. So a whole bunch of stuff was under a certain level, and that was found in a Freedom of Information request, and people were asking questions, and anybody who asked that question, blocked, right? Shocking. Anyway, this says, information technology and communication consultants. This contract was omitted from a previous public disclosure. This contract was sole sourced. And additional comments, a 1-year subscription to the Blue Dot database to provide solutions to track, contextualize, and anticipate global infectious disease risks. The information is delivered via a dashboard solution on the DWAN for Ottawa, Ontario, National Defense. Right. National Defense to track your citizens, right? 24/7, see if they're staying at home. Safe and effective, right? Here's Jamie Sale. Now, I saw this on BitChute, and somebody had sent this to me saying that people are speaking out. I don't know if this is going to be silenced. I mean, it seems like anytime people do speak out, it's silenced pretty quickly. So take it with a grain of salt. But this is a Jamie skeptic. Jamie says, of this Daily Skeptic article, 400 doctors and professionals declare international medical crisis due to COVID vaccine injuries and deaths. I would say there's a heck of a lot more than 400, but this is a good start. And it's interesting. And I watched a bit of the video, and I thought that it was the video that I saw on BitChute that was talking about this, because it had people who were putting up videos talking about why they're signing and what they're seeing and why there's a problem. I saw a brain cut in half. I was going to tag it, and I thought this is too gross to put on the show. So I didn't tag it, but I may have liked it. If you want to see the brain, there's a brain cut in half, and there's a whole bunch of those clotty things in it. And I don't know, you could probably cut a brain in half and prep it with things and then put the lid back on and then pretend you're cutting it and right? It was gross. I was even describing it, I'm kind of like I'm grossed out. I should show it to you just because it was gross. I thought, I don't want to look at this. And then I hit play anyway. And then after I watched it, I was like, yep, I didn't want to look at that. Regardless, these things happen. Maybe look on my Twitter. It's definitely on my Twitter. I'll look and see if I saved it. And then, I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you want to see the brain, and I'll put it in tomorrow's show. Maybe we'll see. But it's very concerning what's happening. And how do you fight against that? That's not what I'm trying to say. How do you deal with the reality of this whole situation and the fact that there really isn't anybody looking into this? There really isn't anybody saying, oh, holy smoke, Ronies, yeah, we did cut that brain up, and officially there are blood clotty things in there. right? Like I'm not seeing that. And so it's concerning to me when I go on social media and see brains getting cut in half and people saying, look, it seems like there's blood clots in here. And then I open the news and it says, the most dangerous thing that's happening in Canada is alt-right white supremacists. And I think this can't be true because it seems like there's more important things happening, right? It's pretty wild. Here's travel, the last tab for today. And these are two people who are in Portugal and they're trying to get on a plane and they're telling the people like, listen, we're going to do the arrivecan app because otherwise we're going to be stuck here and we can't get on the plane and blah, blah, blah. But they're not being allowed to board the plane unless they have the arrivecan app. The gentlemen talking on this video are just trying to get their job done. But I think that their mentality is one of the reasons why this is hanging on so bloody long. Here we go.
To access the aircraft, to travel, you need to make the arrivecan.
Okay. For one app on per phone for 2 people?
No, each one.
He says to access the aircraft, you need to create a profile with the app. And he says for 2 people or just 2 people on one profile. And I think you can probably hear the rest of it because he says, just do it. Like, just do it. What are you talking about? Just do it. And they talk about how there's legalities and blah, blah, blah. But here, I hope you can hear it. Here we go.
You have to make your own sense.
I think it's under the same if you're traveling together.
Listen, you can make that in 10 minutes. It's easy.
Yeah,
And then generate a number. It's
The problem we have is the legality of it all.
No, I think it's not a problem. It's just an
No, but
online
it's something
form.
that the government should include.
It's an online thing,
We're
but
not trying to
they're
fight
trying
with
to.
you
We're not trying to
guys.
fight with you guys. It's our country that we're taking aim at. It has nothing to do with
You want to
guys.
fight against your country. You can't. They have the rules.
There's
They
been
make the
cases-
rules.
There has been cases where we just show
There's lots of
page
people
one of our
fighting against
page one of our passport, and they've let them through. And so I understand why they're doing this in Portugal
Because
we're stuck here. We're stuck here because our hands are tied, so we have to do the act. But if we did it in Montreal, we'd say, give me the fine, and then they give me the fine, and we go to court, and then that fine gets dropped. It gets dropped.
Every time.
Every case gets dropped.
Okay, sir.
So,
please,
So it's-
this is
please,
the
Yes,
reason.
make the
we're
right
gonna-
game.
we're gonna do it.
Make
Well,
the
we're
right
just
Sorry, one
saying-
thing you can do in one cell phone because it's the same reservation. You're gonna put both
Yeah.
names. You check both names. Is done. Okay.
That's good.
Okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Just do it.
So these people were forced to use arrivecan. And I just think the guys who are standing there saying, just do it. You can't fight against your government. Just do it. Man, like, come on, really? Not to say fighting against the government is the way to win this battle. But if you have a legitimate concern with the government, you should be able to air those concerns. You should be able to have private information that's private. The notification on the front of the passport that this is the only document you need to enter Canada should be respected by people in Portugal to allow you to board an airplane, and it is not. And that is a concerning problem. And there seems to be a lot of concerning problems happening in Canada these days. And it doesn't seem like there's a really short way to fixing it. And I think the shortest way is if Mr. Poilievre is actually somebody who is willing to fight for Canada and for what Canada used to represent, the freedom that we used to have. And that would be, hey, holy smoke, I'd be shit shocked, but I'd be happy for the country because that means we'd be in a much better place. I'm very not sure that we're on the right path. I'm not sure that he's to be trusted, etc. But what's done is done. He's the leader of the Conservative Party, and he's going to campaign and he's going to make promises. And all that we can do is wait and see and hope, I suppose. And goodness me, after hearing that speech, I do have a little bit of hope. I'm not going to lie to you. That's enough out of me for today. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out Speaking Moistly and all the other stuff I do. And have a wonderful, wonderful day.